The Galactic Council had ruled the known universe for over 12,000 years. Their laws were absolute, carved into quantum crystals that could never be changed or destroyed. Every species that achieved faster-than-light travel eventually discovered the Council's monitoring stations scattered throughout space. The message was always the same: submit to Council authority or face extinction. Commander Zexar of the Krillian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the primitive blue planet through the viewport. Earth, the humans called it. According to their scouts, this species had just achieved nuclear fusion and was taking their first steps beyond their home system. Perfect timing for what the Council called integration. Send the standard transmission, Zexar ordered his communications officer. His forearms crossed behind his back as he watched the small human vessel drift helplessly in space. It was laughably small compared to his dreadnought, no bigger than one of their escape pods. The transmission beam reached the human ship within seconds. Every species received the same message when they first encountered Council forces. It was burned into their language centers, making it impossible to misunderstand. Greetings, primitive species. You have been detected operating unauthorized faster-than-light technology. By Council Law 847 Alpha, you must immediately surrender all technological advancement records and submit to Council authority. Resistance will result in your species' complete elimination. You have 10 standard minutes to comply. Inside the small human research vessel, Captain Sarah Chen and her crew of 5 received the message with a mixture of confusion and anger. They had been testing humanity's first experimental warp drive when the massive alien ship appeared from nowhere. "Captain," said Lieutenant Rodriguez, the ship's engineer, "their energy readings are off the charts. That thing could vaporize our entire fleet." Captain Chen studied the alien ship on their main screen. It was clearly designed for intimidation, all sharp angles and weapon ports. Everything about it screamed dominance and control. "Dr. Kumar," she called to their xenobiology specialist, "any thoughts on this council they mentioned?" Dr. Kumar pulled up the linguistic analysis their computers had automatically run. The language patterns suggest extreme formality and hierarchy. They're used to being obeyed without question. "But, Captain, there's something else. The message assumes we'll just surrender because they told us to." "And why wouldn't we?" asked Rodriguez nervously. "Look at the size of that thing." Captain Chen smiled grimly. "Because they clearly don't know humans very well." She opened a communication channel back to the alien ship. What she said next would echo through galactic history for centuries to come. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel Pathfinder. We appreciate your introduction to galactic politics, but I'm afraid we can't comply with your demands. You see, humans don't just follow laws because someone with a bigger stick told us to. We make our own laws, and we decide for ourselves what's right and wrong." On the Krillian flagship, Zexar's second-in-command looked at him in shock. "Commander, did they just refuse?" Zexar's scales rippled with what humans might have recognized as disbelief. In 12,000 years, no species had ever refused the Council's initial demands. Some fought back after learning what submission meant, but none had the audacity to simply say no from the very beginning. "Perhaps they didn't understand," he said finally. "Send the clarification protocol." The second message was harsher, including holographic images of worlds that had been reduced to ash for defying the Council. Entire civilizations wiped from existence, their planets left as lifeless reminders of what happened to those who chose resistance. Captain Chen watched the horrific images with her crew. The silence on their bridge was heavy with the weight of what they were seeing. "They're not bluffing," whispered Rodriguez. "No," Chen agreed. "They're not. Dr. Kumar, how long until our message reaches Earth?" "At this distance, about 18 minutes for the signal to get there, and another 18 for any response." Chen nodded. "Then, we have 36 minutes to figure out how to save humanity." "Captain," Rodriguez said urgently, "maybe we should consider no." Chen's voice cut through the bridge like a laser. "I've seen enough tyrants in human history to recognize one when I see it. The only thing that changes when you bow to a bully is that you have to keep bowing." She opened the channel again. "Commander Zexar, I presume that's your name based on the formal introduction in your data packet." I want you to understand something about humans. We've spent our entire history fighting each other over who gets to make the rules. We've had kings and emperors and dictators who all thought they had the right to tell others how to live. Do you know what happened to most of them? Zexar found himself genuinely curious despite the situation. No species had ever lectured him before. We killed them, Chen continued matter-of-factly. Or we threw them out of power. Or we fought wars that lasted decades to prove they couldn't control us. We've been practicing revolution for thousands of years, Commander. It's what we do. You speak boldly for someone whose ship I could destroy with a single weapon burst, Zexar replied. Yes, you could kill us. But, you can't kill an idea. And, the idea that you can show up at our planet and demand submission just because you have bigger guns? That idea is going to get you and your council into more trouble than you can possibly imagine. Dr. Kumar was frantically working at his station, analyzing everything they could about the alien ship. Captain, I'm picking up something interesting. Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it's all standardized. Same energy signatures, same materials, same design philosophy. It's like they've stopped innovating entirely. Chen raised an eyebrow. Stopped innovating? Why would they do that? Because innovation leads to change, and change threatens established power, Dr. Kumar replied. If I had to guess, I'd say this council has been using the same technology for centuries, maybe millennia. They don't need to improve because nobody has ever forced them to. A slow smile spread across Captain Chen's face. Commander Zexar, tell me something. When was the last time your council faced a species that fought back? Not just resisted, but actually fought back with new ideas, new tactics, new technology? There was a long pause before Zexar responded. All species fight when cornered. It makes no difference. But, when was the last time you faced a species that had been fighting itself for its entire existence? A species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war not against primitive enemies, but against others with the same level of technology and creativity? Another pause, longer this time. Commander, Chen continued, I think you're about to learn something about humans that your council won't like. We don't just break your laws. We rewrite the rules of the game entirely. At that moment, Dr. Kumar's station lit up with incoming data. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from Earth. It's Admiral Harrison. The face of Earth's top military commander appeared on their screen. His expression was grim but determined. Captain Chen, we received your transmission. I want you to know that the President has called an emergency session of the United Nations. Every nation on Earth is being briefed on this situation right now. Admiral, you need to understand the scale of what we're facing. This isn't just one ship, it's an entire galactic empire that's been conquering species for thousands of years. Admiral Harrison nodded. We understand, Captain. We also understand that you just declared humanity's independence from an alien government we'd never heard of 30 minutes ago. The President wants me to tell you that Earth stands behind your decision. Sir? Captain, every human government has voted unanimously on our response to this council. We're officially rejecting their authority over human space and human affairs. We're also authorizing the immediate activation of the Phoenix Protocol. Captain Chen felt her blood run cold. The Phoenix Protocol was humanity's most classified military program. If they were activating it, it meant Earth was preparing for total war. Admiral, the Phoenix ships aren't ready for combat trials, let alone actual war. They'll have to be ready, Captain. Because according to our analysis of the data you sent, this council has never faced anything like what we're about to show them. Commander Zexar had been listening to the human transmissions with growing unease. The linguistic analysis showed these creatures were completely serious. They were actually planning to fight the council. Commander, his weapons officer said, should I destroy their vessel? Zexar considered it. Standard protocol was to eliminate any species that refused council authority immediately. But something about these humans made him pause. They weren't acting like any species he'd encountered before. There was no fear in their voices, no desperate pleading. They spoke like they were already planning their next move. Negative, he said finally. I want to see what they do next. It was a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Captain Chen received Admiral Harrison's final transmission just as their sensors detected massive energy buildups throughout the human solar system. Captain, you need to get home immediately. We're about to show these council forces what human creativity looks like when we're angry. As the Pathfinder engaged its experimental warp drive to flee toward Earth, Zexhar made a fatal error in judgment. Instead of destroying the human ship, he decided to follow it. He wanted to see this primitive homeworld that thought it could challenge the Council. He wanted to understand what made these humans so different from every other species the Council had conquered. Within 3 hours, he would have his answer. And, by then, it would be far too late to stop what humanity was about to unleash upon the galaxy. The war between humans and the Galactic Council was about to begin. But, unlike every other conflict in Council history, this one wouldn't be a conquest. It would be a revolution that would reshape the very concept of galactic governance. As the human ship disappeared into warp space with the Krillian dreadnought following behind it, neither side fully understood what they had just started. The Council thought they were dealing with another primitive species that needed to be crushed. The humans thought they were fighting for their freedom against another would-be tyrant. They were both wrong. What was really happening was the beginning of the end of the Council's 12,000-year rule. Because humans had something no other species in the galaxy possessed, they had spent their entire evolutionary history learning how to fight against superior odds and win. And they were about to teach the galaxy a lesson about the difference between following laws and making them. Commander Zexhar expected to find a primitive world when his dreadnought dropped out of warp space at the edge of the human solar system. What he found instead defied everything he knew about newly spacefaring species. Earth was gone. Not destroyed, moved. The entire planet had been shifted from its original orbit and was now surrounded by a defensive grid that made his scales crawl with unease. Massive orbital platforms bristled with weapons he didn't recognize. Ships unlike anything in Council databases patrolled in perfect formations. And the energy readings his instruments were detecting made no sense at all. Commander, his sensor operator said, voice shaking slightly, I'm reading power levels that should be impossible for their technology base. These readings suggest they've made a century of advancement in the 3 hours since we encountered them. Zexhar studied the tactical display. The humans hadn't just prepared for war, they had transformed their entire solar system into a fortress. But, how could they have moved so quickly? His answer came in the form of a transmission from Earth. This time, it wasn't from a single ship captain. The face that appeared on his screen belonged to someone who commanded respect even through an alien communication system. Commander Zexhar, this is President Martinez of the United Earth Government. Welcome to human space. I believe you've come here to deliver an ultimatum to our species. Zexhar composed himself quickly. I have come to bring you into compliance with Council law. Your species will submit to Council authority or face the same fate as the other worlds you've been shown. President Martinez nodded calmly. Yes, we saw those images. Entire civilizations wiped out because they refused to bow to your authority. It was very educational, Commander. It taught us exactly what kind of enemy we're dealing with. Enemy? Zexhar found the word strange coming from a species that was clearly outgunned by several orders of magnitude. We are not enemies unless you choose to make us so. Submit to Council authority, and your species will be preserved. As slaves. As subjects. There is a difference. President Martinez smiled, and something about that expression made Zexhar deeply uncomfortable. Commander, let me tell you about human history. We've had lots of experience with people who showed up and demanded submission. Romans, Mongols, Nazis, colonial empires, all of them thought they had the right to rule over others because they had superior military force. And what happened to these empires? They all fell, Commander. Every single one. Because they made the same mistake your council is making right now. Zexhar's tactical officer interrupted urgently. Commander, I'm detecting massive power buildups throughout the system. Whatever they're charging, it's drawing energy from their star itself. Impossible, Zexhar muttered, but his instruments confirmed the reading. The humans were somehow siphoning energy directly from their sun.
President Martinez continued as if he hadn't been interrupted.
The mistake, Commander, is thinking that superior firepower makes you superior people. You believe that because you can destroy us, you have the right to rule us. But humans learned a long time ago that there's a difference between winning a battle and winning a war. Your species has never fought a war against Council technology. No, but we've fought wars against each other for thousands of years. And, in that time, we learned something very important: the side with the biggest guns doesn't always win. The side that adapts fastest usually does. At that moment, Zexhar's worst fears were realized. His long-range sensors detected incoming warp signatures. Lots of them. Council reinforcements were arriving, just as protocol demanded. 3 more dreadnoughts, each one capable of sterilizing a planet. But, as the Council ships dropped out of warp space, Zexhar realized that the humans had been counting on exactly this response.
Captain Chen told you something important, Commander, President Martinez said.
She told you that humans don't just follow laws, we make them.
What she didn't tell you is how we make them.
The orbital platforms around Earth suddenly came alive with energy.
But, instead of firing weapons, they were projecting something into space. Vast geometric patterns made of pure energy began forming around the human fleet.
We make laws through consensus, Commander.
Every human government voted on our response to your council.
But, before we voted, we did something your council probably never does.
What?
We asked our scientists what was possible. Zexhar watched in growing horror as the energy patterns completed themselves. They weren't weapons, they were something far worse. The humans had built a gravitational manipulation system that covered their entire solar system.
The Phoenix Protocol, President Martinez explained, isn't just about new ships or new weapons.
It's about new physics. For the past 50 years, our best minds have been working on technologies that your council declared impossible or forbidden. Turns out, when humans are told something can't be done, we take it as a personal challenge. The council reinforcement fleet was trying to establish a standard siege formation, but their ships were moving like they were trapped in thick liquid. The gravitational fields the humans had created were making normal space travel nearly impossible.
Commander Veltar, to all ships, came a transmission from the lead council reinforcement vessel. What is this interference? My engines are barely responsive.
Zexhar tried to answer, but found that his own ship was being affected. The humans had somehow turned their entire solar system into a trap that made conventional space combat impossible. You see, Commander, President Martinez continued, your council has been using the same technology for thousands of years because it works.
Why fix what isn't broken, right? But humans approach technology differently.
We don't just use what works, we constantly try to find something that works better. One of the human ships moved toward the Council fleet, and Zexhar got his first close look at what the Phoenix Protocol had created. The vessel defied everything he knew about space combat design. It had no obvious engines, no weapon ports, and its hull seemed to shimmer like liquid metal. Meet the Prometheus, President Martinez said with obvious pride.
Humanity's first reality manipulation vessel. She doesn't use conventional weapons, Commander.
She rewrites the laws of physics in localized areas.
To demonstrate, the Prometheus approached Commander Veltar's dreadnought. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen.
Then, the Council ship simply stopped working. Not destroyed, not damaged, it just became inert, floating helplessly in space.
What did you do to my ship?
Commander Veltar demanded over the communication channel. We changed the fundamental constants in a small area around your vessel, came a new voice. This was Captain Chen, apparently now commanding the strange human ship. In the space immediately around your ship, the strong nuclear force doesn't work quite the same way. Your fusion reactors just became very expensive paperweights. Zexhar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of council service, genuine fear.
This is impossible. These technologies violate basic physical laws.
No, Commander, Captain Chen replied.
They violate your understanding of physical laws.
Humans have had a saying for a long time: any sufficiently advanced technology looks like magic. What you're seeing isn't magic, it's just science that your council never bothered to pursue.
President Martinez took over the transmission again.
Your council made a fatal assumption, Commander. You assumed that because you'd conquered every other species easily, humans would be just as easy. But every other species you conquered was alone. They had to figure out how to fight you while also fighting for their survival.
And humans are different?
Humans have been fighting each other for so long that we've already solved all the hard problems.
We know how to rapidly mobilize entire civilizations for war. We know how to innovate under pressure. We know how to coordinate massive operations across vast distances.
Most importantly, we know how to turn our own diversity into a tactical advantage.
As if to prove his point, the space around Earth suddenly filled with ships unlike anything Zexar had ever seen.
Each one represented a different human nation or culture, but they moved with perfect coordination. The Chinese contributed quantum manipulation technology, President Martinez explained, as a sleek vessel disabled another council ship by making its hull permeable to its own atmosphere. The Europeans provided gravitic engineering.
The Americans brought their expertise in rapid weapons development. The Africans contributed biotechnology that lets our ships self-repair. Every human culture brought something unique to this fight.
Zexar watched his fleet being systematically neutralized without a single shot being fired in the traditional sense. The humans weren't destroying council ships, they were making them irrelevant.
This is why your council will lose this war, Commander, Captain Chen added. You've spent 12,000 years making everyone the same.
You've eliminated diversity, crushed innovation, and created a galaxy where everyone thinks exactly like you do. But diversity isn't weakness, it's humanity's greatest strength.
You cannot win, Zexar protested desperately. The Council has fleets across the galaxy. We will send everything we have.
We're counting on it, President Martinez replied calmly. Because while you've been conquering planets, we've been studying something much more important.
What? We've been studying you.
The communication screen changed to show a massive holographic display covering the space between Earth and Mars. It was a three-dimensional map of the entire galaxy, with thousands of points of light representing council worlds and fleets. Dr. Kumar's xenobiology team has been analyzing every piece of data you've transmitted, President Martinez explained. We now know the location of every council world, every major fleet base, and every political center in your empire.
Zexar felt his four hearts skip a beat.
That information is classified beyond your ability to decode. Not if you understand human psychology and council arrogance. Dr. Kumar's voice joined the conversation. Your people are so used to dealing with primitives that you never bothered to encrypt your data properly.
To you, we're just another species to be conquered. You never considered that we might actually be intelligent enough to understand what you were showing us.
The galactic map zoomed in on specific systems, highlighting weaknesses in council defenses, supply lines that could be cut, and political tensions that could be exploited.
Here's what's going to happen, Commander, President Martinez said with quiet certainty. You're going to take a message back to your council.
You're going to tell them that humanity rejects their authority and will fight any attempt to impose it on us or any other species.
They will not listen. The council has never negotiated with primitives.
Then, they'll learn the hard way, Captain Chen interjected.
Because we're not just defending Earth, Commander. We're about to liberate every species your council has ever conquered.
The space around the disabled council ship suddenly filled with smaller human vessels. But these weren't warships, they were communication platforms, broadcasting signals toward every inhabited system in the galaxy.
What are you doing? Zexar demanded. We're sharing technology, President Martinez explained.
Every species your council has suppressed is about to receive the complete specifications for Phoenix Protocol ships, gravitational manipulation technology, and reality manipulation weapons. We're also broadcasting the locations of every council fleet and the tactical weaknesses we've identified.
Zexar realized with mounting horror what the humans were doing.
They weren't just fighting the council, they were starting a galaxy-wide revolution.
You have just declared war on the entire established order of the galaxy.
No, Commander, President Martinez corrected.
We've just declared the established order illegal. There's a difference. The Council will crush any rebellion. We have done so before.
You've crushed individual rebellions by species that were isolated and fighting alone, Captain Chen pointed out. You've never faced a coordinated revolt by hundreds of species who suddenly have access to technology that makes your weapons obsolete.
As if summoned by her words, Zexar's sensors began detecting anomalous readings from across the galaxy.
In system after system, species that had been conquered by the Council were suddenly displaying energy signatures that matched human technology.
Impossible, he whispered. They cannot integrate new technology that quickly.
They can if humans spent the last 3 hours designing it specifically to be integrated quickly, Dr. Kumar explained.
We didn't just develop weapons, Commander. We developed weapons that any spacefaring species could build with their existing industrial base. President Martinez leaned forward in his chair. Your Council ruled through technological superiority. But, what happens when that superiority disappears overnight? What happens when every conquered species suddenly has access to weapons that can disable your ships without firing a shot? Zexar knew the answer, and it terrified him. Without their technological advantage, the Council was just another government trying to rule over species that vastly outnumbered them. And, governments that lose the consent of the governed don't usually last very long. Take this message back to your Council, Commander, President Martinez said formally. Humanity hereby declares the laws of the Galactic Council null and void in all human space and offers sanctuary to any species seeking freedom from Council rule. We further declare that any attempt by the Council to enforce their authority over unwilling subjects will be considered an act of aggression against the free peoples of the galaxy. You are declaring yourself enemies of galactic civilization.
No, President Martinez corrected one final time.
We're declaring ourselves the beginning of actual galactic civilization. Your Council isn't civilization, Commander. It's just tyranny with better weapons.
As the disabled Council ships were gently pushed toward the edge of the solar system by human gravitational fields, Zexar realized that everything had changed. The Council's 12,000-year rule was ending, and it was ending because they had finally encountered a species that refused to accept that might made right. The humans hadn't just rejected Council authority. They had made it irrelevant. And, across the galaxy, every suppressed species was about to learn that the tyrants who had ruled them for millennia were nowhere near as invincible as they pretended to be. 6 months later, the Galactic Council no longer existed. Commander Zexar stood in the observation deck of what had once been the Council's most powerful dreadnought. Now it served as his personal transport, but only because the humans had allowed him to keep it. The irony wasn't lost on him. The ship that had once symbolized Council dominance was now running on human-designed power systems and crewed by former Council soldiers who had chosen freedom over their old allegiances. Through the viewport, he watched the construction of something that would have been impossible just months ago, Harmony Station, the first truly democratic galactic government center. Representatives from over 300 species worked together in orbital shipyards, building a space station designed not to project power, but to facilitate cooperation. Amazing, isn't it? Zexar turned to see Captain Chen approaching. She now wore the uniform of the Galactic Liberation Fleet, but she still carried herself with the same confidence that had impressed him during their first encounter. I admit, Zexar said carefully, I did not expect this outcome. Really? You thought we'd all just start fighting each other once the Council was gone? Zexar's scales rippled with what might have been embarrassment. Your species has a history of internal conflict. Most Council analysts predicted that removing our stabilizing influence would result in chaos. Captain Chen laughed, but not unkindly. You know what your analysts forgot to consider? Humans fight each other because we care passionately about how things should be done. But, when we face a common threat, those same passionate disagreements become our greatest strength. She gestured toward the massive construction project outside. Look at what we built together. Every species contributed something unique. The Altarians provided crystal and computing technology that processes information faster than anything the Council ever had. The vegan colonists contributed agricultural systems that can feed entire worlds. The Centauri Collective brought social organization models that let hundreds of different cultures work together without losing their identity.
And humans? Zexhar asked.
We brought the idea that it was all possible in the first place. They watched in silence as a ship from the former Council world of Kepler 442 docked with the station. The vessel bore scars from the revolution, burn marks where Council loyalist forces had tried to prevent its species from joining the liberation. But it had made the journey anyway, carrying delegates eager to participate in something that had never existed in galactic history, a government based on voluntary cooperation rather than forced submission.
I still don't understand, Zexhar admitted. How did you coordinate so many species so quickly? The logistics alone should have been impossible. Captain Chen smiled. You want to know the real secret of human success? We're really good at building institutions. We've been doing it for thousands of years.
Governments, corporations, universities, international organizations, we know how to create structures that let large groups of people work together toward common goals.
The Council had institutions. The Council had bureaucracy. There's a difference.
Bureaucracy exists to maintain control.
Institutions exist to get things done. As if to prove her point, a message arrived on Captain Chen's communication device.
She read it quickly, then looked up with obvious excitement.
Speaking of getting things done, would you like to see something that's going to change the galaxy forever?
Zexhar found himself genuinely curious. In the months since his defeat at Earth, the humans had shown him wonders that challenged everything he thought he knew about what was possible.
What have you created now? Not created. Discovered. Dr. Kumar's team has been analyzing the data we captured from Council archives. Turns out your people were sitting on the most important discovery in galactic history.
Captain Chen led him to the station's main research facility. Inside, Dr. Kumar was working with a team that included scientists from dozens of different species. The diversity was startling. Beings with crystalline bodies worked alongside aquatic species in specialized environmental suits, while energy-based lifeforms contributed through harmonic interfaces.
Captain Chen, perfect timing, Dr. Kumar called out.
We've just confirmed our hypothesis about the Council's greatest secret.
What secret? Zexhar asked, his curiosity overcoming his caution. Dr. Kumar gestured to a massive holographic display showing what appeared to be a star map of the entire galaxy. But this map was different from any Zexhar had ever seen.
It showed currents of energy flowing between star systems, connecting them in a vast network. The Council knew about this for thousands of years but never told anyone, Dr. Kumar explained.
The galaxy isn't just a collection of isolated star systems.
It's a living entity with its own energy patterns and information flows. Every star, every planet, every life form is part of a vast galactic consciousness.
Zexhar stared at the display in shock. That's impossible. We would have detected such phenomena. You did detect it, a new voice said. Zexhar turned to see President Martinez approaching.
The human leader looked older than he had 6 months ago, but his eyes burned with the same determination that had started this revolution. The Council detected these energy patterns centuries ago, President Martinez continued.
But, instead of studying them, you suppressed the research.
According to your own archives, Council leadership was afraid that knowledge of galactic consciousness would lead to species working together instead of competing for Council approval.
They were right to be afraid, Captain Chen added.
Because once species understand that they're all part of something larger than themselves, the idea of one group dominating all the others becomes absurd. Dr. Kumar manipulated the holographic display, zooming in on specific areas where the energy flows were particularly dense. What we've discovered is that every major advancement in galactic civilization coincided with periods when these energy flows were strongest. Art, science, philosophy, technology, they all flourish when species are connected to the galactic consciousness.
And the Council was suppressing this? Not just suppressing it, President Martinez said grimly. They were actively working to disrupt it. The standardization of technology, the elimination of cultural diversity, the forced isolation of conquered species, all of it was designed to cut individual worlds off from the galactic consciousness. Zexhar felt something that might have been shame. We thought we were bringing order to chaos.
You were bringing silence to a conversation that had been going on for millions of years, Dr. Kumar replied. But, here's the beautiful part, the conversation is starting again. The display changed to show real-time energy flows throughout the galaxy. Where once there had been isolated pockets of activity, now there were streams of connection linking system after system. As species regained their freedom and began to rediscover their individual cultures, they were also reconnecting to something much larger than themselves. This is why the revolution succeeded so quickly, Captain Chen explained. It wasn't just human technology or military tactics. When we broadcast our message to the galaxy, we weren't just sharing weapons and technical specifications. We were reopening channels of communication that the Council had spent millennia trying to close. Every species that joined the liberation was connecting not just with us, but with the galactic consciousness itself, President Martinez added. They were remembering what they had lost during centuries of Council rule. Zexar studied the display with growing wonder. The energy patterns were beautiful, but also somehow familiar. Deep in his genetic memory, he recalled stories his people had told before the Council arrived. Stories of a time when the stars spoke to each other, when every world was part of a vast galactic community. What happens now? He asked quietly. Now we learn, Dr. Kumar said simply. For the first time in thousands of years, every species in the galaxy is free to explore their full potential. We're going to discover things that the Council never imagined possible. And, we're going to do it together, President Martinez added. Not because anyone is forcing us to cooperate, but because we choose to. Captain Chen led Zexar to another section of the research facility, where teams were working on projects that boggled his mind. Species that had never been allowed to develop their own technology were creating innovations that surpassed anything in the Council archives. Art forms that had been suppressed for centuries were flourishing again. Scientific theories that had been declared heretical were proving to be fundamental truths about the nature of reality. You know what the most amazing part is? Captain Chen asked as they watched a team of former Council subjects working on what appeared to be a faster-than-light communication system that didn't require artificial technology at all. What? They're proving that humans were wrong about something important. Zexar looked at her in surprise. Wrong about what? We thought we were teaching the galaxy about freedom and democracy. Turns out, we were just helping everyone remember what they already knew. In a nearby laboratory, scientists from the vegan colonies were working with crystalline beings from the Altair system to develop new forms of energy that could power entire civilizations without depleting natural resources. Their breakthrough wasn't based on human technology, it was based on principles that had been encoded in their genetic memories for millions of years. The galactic consciousness isn't something we created, Dr. Kumar explained as he joined them. It's something we restored. Every species in the galaxy carries the memory of connection, cooperation, and shared growth. The Council's greatest crime wasn't conquest, it was making everyone forget who they really were. President Martinez appeared on a communication screen, speaking from the main assembly chamber where representatives from across the galaxy were working on the charter for their new government. Commander Zexar, he said formally, the Galactic Assembly would like to extend an invitation to you and any other former Council personnel who choose to accept it. An invitation to what? To help us build something better than what came before. Your people have experience in galactic administration, even if you were using it for the wrong purposes. We could use that experience to create systems that actually serve the needs of all species. Zexar was quiet for a long moment. Why would you trust us? We enslaved half the galaxy. Because, Captain Chen said gently, you weren't evil. You were just wrong. There's a difference. She gestured toward the ongoing construction outside. Look at what we're building out there. It's not a human space station, or a Krillian space station, or any other single-species vision of what galactic government should look like. It's something new, created by everyone working together. Including former Council personnel who want to be part of the solution instead of the problem, President Martinez added. Dr. Kumar pulled up another display, this one showing communication networks spreading throughout the galaxy. We're not just building a new government, Commander. We're building a new form of civilization. One based on the idea that diversity makes everyone stronger, not weaker.
Zexar watched the display with growing amazement.
The network showed billions of individual conversations happening simultaneously across thousands of worlds.
Scientists sharing discoveries, artists collaborating on projects that spanned multiple star systems, philosophers debating questions that no single species could answer alone.
This is what the galaxy was meant to be, Captain Chen said softly. Not an empire ruled by fear, but a community held together by curiosity and mutual respect.
The Council spent 12,000 years trying to create order through control, President Martinez observed. We're proving that you can create order through cooperation instead. As if summoned by their conversation, a new message arrived from Earth. It was Admiral Harrison, but he wasn't alone. The screen showed representatives from every major human nation standing together. Commander Zexar, Admiral Harrison said, "We wanted you to hear this directly from us.
The United Earth government has voted to formally apologize to your people and every other species that suffered during the revolution."
Zexar was startled. Apologize?
For what? For not finding a way to liberate the galaxy without any loss of life. We know that many Council personnel died in the fighting, and we regret that it was necessary.
It was war, Zexar protested. Casualties were inevitable.
Maybe, Admiral Harrison replied.
But humans have a saying, just because something is necessary doesn't mean it isn't tragic.
We want every former Council citizen to know that they're welcome in the new galaxy we're building together. President Martinez rejoined them in person, carrying a document that bore the seals of hundreds of different species.
The Galactic Assembly has just ratified our founding charter. Would you like to see what we've created? Zexar accepted the document with trembling hands.
The charter was written in dozens of languages, but somehow he could understand all of it. The galactic consciousness was translating it directly into his mind, sharing not just the words but the emotions and intentions behind them.
The document was unlike any government charter in galactic history.
Instead of defining territories and subjects, it defined principles and relationships. Instead of establishing rulers and ruled, it created a framework for voluntary cooperation between equal partners. Article 1, Zexar read aloud. The galaxy belongs to all its children, and all its children belong to the galaxy. No species, government, or individual has the right to impose their will upon another through force or coercion. Article 12, Captain Chen continued. Every being has the right to reach their full potential, and every species has the responsibility to help others reach theirs.
Article 27, Dr. Kumar added.
The diversity of life, thought, and culture is the galaxy's greatest treasure and must be protected and celebrated by all.
President Martinez smiled. It's not perfect. No government charter ever is.
But it's a start. A start toward what? Toward becoming the civilization the galaxy was always meant to be, Captain Chen replied. One where laws aren't imposed by the powerful on the weak, but created by everyone working together to solve common problems. As they spoke, the space around Harmony Station filled with ships from across the galaxy. Not warships this time, but vessels carrying artists, scientists, explorers, and ordinary citizens who wanted to be part of something larger than themselves. Commander, President Martinez said formally, the Galactic Assembly has authorized me to ask you a question.
What question? Would you be willing to serve as our first Secretary of Reconciliation?
Your job would be to help former Council worlds and personnel find their place in the new galactic community.
Zexar stared at him in shock. You want me to serve in your government? After everything I've done?
Because of everything you've done, Captain Chen corrected. You understand both the old system and the new one. That makes you uniquely qualified to help people transition from one to the other. Besides, Dr. Kumar added with a grin, humans have another saying, the best way to ensure that something like the Council never happens again is to put former Council personnel in charge of making sure it doesn't. Zexar looked around at the three humans who had become, impossibly, his friends. Then, he looked out at the growing community of species working together to build something that had never existed before. I accept, he said quietly. And, in that moment, the galactic consciousness pulsed with something that might have been joy. For the first time in millennia, the galaxy was whole again. Not because anyone had conquered it, but because everyone had chosen to be part of it. The age of empire was over.
The age of community had begun.
And it had all started because one species had refused to accept that might made right, and had instead proven that cooperation made everyone stronger.